right, we got another Media Spotlight edition of the show, and as always, it's great to bring on my guys, Adam Eaton and Eric Lopez. Adam from Sons of UCF, and Elo from, I guess we call it the night shift now, right?
Yeah, that's the podcast show now name. I mean, the website's still blackandgoldbanneret.com. I broadcast UCF softball. I do a lot of hats. I wear a lot of hats.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do, my friend. And guys, it's great to have you on board once again. Of course, we come into the opening segment of the show playing some CBS NCAA music. This is actually the very first version of what is now the third version today, which I still think this one's the best. But we're going to talk, recap some March Madness coverage. So let's get to that first out of the gate. So it was the last ride for Jim Nantz as the voice of the tournament and the Final Four. And my interesting take on this, or at least I think it's interesting, is I kind of felt, and I don't know if Nantz asked for this. I don't know if CBS was trying to sell a narrative of Nantz riding with the Houston Cougars all the way to H-Town as he covered them both the first and the second round. I kind of felt that was a little forced. I think it might have been better to hold him out of that, but I know it was his alma mater and everything like that. But I sensed, when they lost their game, you could hear the disappointment in him. At least I thought I could hear that. Maybe that's what I wanted to hear. I don't know, but wanted to get your guys' take on the Nantz trip with Houston, and of course all his ride through the Final Four over not just this year, but over the years. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, CBS got lucky, right? I mean, Houston was a top team, right? They were, I mean, if not the top overall seed, they were obviously in that mixed as the top seed. It was in Houston this year, right? So I think there's a bit of a kismet factor involved in the fact that it was his last year. Houston was a good team. It was in Houston. So I can see them trying to line that synergy up a little bit. And if I'm Nantz, yeah, I'm probably a little bit disappointed, right? And ideally, you don't want to show that or have that inflected in your voice, but I mean, we're all human, right? I could understand him thinking this would be a nice Cinderella story. It doesn't pan out. I'm sure there's some disappointment, but I thought it was a good fitting tribute. I thought it was the appropriate levels of reverence to Jim. I thought he had opportunities to address, the audience, the crowd, if you will, the viewer. I thought they did some nice tributes. So overall, I thought it was a fair send-off. I was concerned it'd be a little over the top, and I was thinking we're gonna do this thing where every game we do the rocking chair situation, right? The old NBA send-off where Kareem got 82 games with rocking chairs, right? So I'm glad we didn't do that. I thought it was the appropriate level of conversation. I thought he handled it really well. Talking about friends, his last line essentially saying goodbye friends at that point, right? I thought that was a really nice touch. So I was hoping it wouldn't be over the top. I didn't feel like it was over the top. I felt like it was the right way to go out. But I don't fault CBS or Jim Nantz for thinking Houston, could have lined up there, because that would have been the perfect kismet way to go out story. So I don't fault them for trying to line that up. If Houston was like a 9 seed, then I'd be like, what are we doing here? But they were a good team, right? They were a team that had championship aspirations. So to me, it made a lot of sense.
Well, and the other thing was you didn't have the powers. Like North Carolina wasn't in the tournament. Duke was sent to my backyard in Orlando and our backyard. So they weren't an option. Because normally, in a normal year, I think he would have done Greensboro. I thought this whole time he was going to do Greensboro Friday, Sunday, because he's even said this in interviews. His first ever regional he worked with was 1986, was in Greensboro when he covered Johnny Dawkins and Duke was in that region. I even asked Johnny Dawkins about that during the season. And so
wasn't he with Raftery in that first?
He was with Raftery, ironically enough, for that first NCAA tournament when he was doing those games. And then eventually, obviously, he was the studio for the Final Four that year. So I thought he was going to do Greensboro just to, hey, one more time around turn, But what happened was with no North Carolina there, no Duke, I think they went with the Houston angle. Plus, they had Alabama and Birmingham there. And then I think the way the tournament played out, you could argue that the Midwest, which is where Houston was the best regional on paper for the Sweet 16 round. They always picked the best regional. So I could be wrong. I don't think he was planning on following them the whole way. I think they may have forced the first one And then the second one is like, oh, that is the best regional because of all the upsets after the dust settled. So I don't know if that was by design, but I do think that became the main storyline with the lack of powers. Hey, can Houston make it to the Final Four the year they're hosting the Final Four on 40-year anniversary of the when they play NC State for the national title? And yes, the voice of the network, who's called 32 some Final Fours, got his start with Houston. Wouldn't that be something? So I do think that was the direction they went with, and Miami decided to end that storyline.
Yeah, boy, did they
Eric,
ever?
Elo, I'm curious overall though. What are your thoughts on a lot of conversation about the Final Four not having those blue bloods this year, right? I mean, we saw FAU, San Diego State, smaller schools.
New
What are your
bloods.
thoughts on how much do you think that really impacts ratings? How much do either of you think that really impacts the viewer, or do you think there's an element of people are like, hey, this is new, let me check this out? Do you think that really impacts ratings to an appreciable degree that execs are worried about that kind of stuff?
I don't know about worry. I think we do tend to, and I write a lot of TV stuff, so we tend to make this more dramatic than it really is, right? Like, oh my God, they got the lowest rated finals. My God, is the NBA in trouble? And then you look up and it's like 10, 12 million people are still watching. And I think it's the similar case here. I don't think it's like, oh my goodness, college basketball is in big trouble. It was the lowest national championship game ever, Connecticut and San Diego State. To put that in perspective, last year, North Carolina played Kansas. That was on TBS, which is on less homes than CBS. That's the thing. When you're on broadcast network channel, you still have the advantage of being on more homes, it's easier to find. Yet Carolina, Kansas outrated that, even though it was on cable. I think if you ask CBS, they wish they could have had last year's Final Four. They would have drawn much more viewership. But is anybody going to lose sleep over you? CBS only, quote, getting 14 million for Connecticut, San Diego State? No, I wouldn't cry and lose sleep over it. But I do think it makes a factor. I think there were some casual people that actually, because of that, actually watched the women's Final Four instead of the men's Final Four because they had Caitlin Clark. They had the storylines, and I don't think it's an accident that the women's drew their highest ratings for their semifinal in the national championship game in a year where the men's had its lowest.
And on a Sunday afternoon, no less.
A great slot on ABC, network television.
Yeah. So, Nantz obviously has called more Final Fours than anyone by a long shot. I don't know if that's a number that anybody's ever going to hit. But you think about over the years, he's paired with Billy Packer for many, many years. Paired with Clark Kellogg, Greg Anthony, and of course now the current lineup with Raftery and Grant Hill. What how do you rate his current setup with what it was with Billy Packer? Because Billy Packer was certainly a lightning rod as far as broadcasters was concerned.
I actually think Nantz is better now, ironically, than he was with Billy Packer. I always thought that Nantz and Packer was very stiff. You know what I mean? Like very dry. Like Billy Packer was always serious. Like, oh, that's a terrible pass. That's a turnover. That's a great analyst. But he was like, whereas Raftery with Raftery's very, hey, this is fun, huh, Jim? I think it allowed Jim's personality to come out more. Because I think when you remember Jim with Packer, it was very low key in comparison. So I actually I really liked when he had Steve Kerr as part of the 3-man booth a few years back. That he acknowledged there with, who was it? It was the third guy. That was Kerr, Nantz, and was it Kellogg? Was it Kellogg? Who was it? Or
I think it was Kellogg.
So
I think it was Clark, yeah.
I like that crew too. I'm not as big. I think Grant Hill is better by himself than this crew because he defers a lot to Raftery and Jim. But I actually like Jim in this version more than the early 90s, in my opinion, with Packer.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. I think Raftery brings a level of fun where Billy Packer kind of felt like your freshman basketball coach, right? Was, run lines and do this, knowledgeable about the game, but he kind of felt very authoritarian on his calls, where it Raftery, to Elo's points, a little bit loosey-goosey, a little bit more, catchphrase drop and having some fun, kind of I don't want to say an older Tony Romo, but kind of a Tony Romo-esque, where it's a lot of shtick, a lot of catchphrases, but he really knows the game. I think Eric hit the right point. I don't know how Grant Hill fit in that contract. I think Raftery's such a good personality. They have such a good chemistry. It felt awkward trying to shoehorn Grant in there. I agree. I like his analysis, but I think he's kind of wasted in that 3-man situation. Curious to see what obviously they do with Nantz popping out of that. But I agree. I think Raftery brought out an ability for Jim to have a little bit more let your hair down kind of a feel, where I think he kind of felt like we all as viewers, like, I don't want to piss off Billy Packer because he's going to lecture me on air. I think he's allowed to kind of let his hair down a little bit with.
No, that's
with
fair. Yeah. I think that's a great description, what Adam just described. I actually do think that's what it was. I think that's a valid point. And it's going to be interesting what they do with Ian Eagle, to your point, because the guy that's waiting in the wings, clearly, is Jay Wright. Clearly. Who was phenomenal this year, I thought, in the studio. He's done some games with Raftery. It's clear he's the heir apparent. The question is, do they put him in with Raftery, or do they just wait till Raftery retires and then slide right in? That's going to be the question moving forward, I think, for the Final Four.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, let's kind of get to that, because obviously with Nantz moving on, Ian Eagles going to the #1 team. Do they keep Raftery and Hill in that role, or do they go a different direction? And of course, now this brings up another interesting piece too, because with Ian Eagle moving up to the 1 team, now there's a play-by-play opening for tournaments moving forward, and it'll be interesting to see what they want to do there. My thought going off the board, I would love to see them bring Gus Johnson back. I think that would be fabulous to have him back in the play-by-play rotation, not necessarily as a second weekend guy, but I think, bringing him back and bringing some flavor in the first round would be kind of fun. Jim Spanarkel has been Ian's longtime partner. What happens to him in this mix? So there's definitely going to be, as the last 3 years have been pretty well steady with their teams. This next year is going to bring back some changes.
And the Spanarkel thing is underrated, because him and Eagle have been a pair for over a decade.
Yes.
So what do you do with Spanarkel now? Do you keep him in that #2 slot and plug in a play-by-play guy with him? Do you move Spanarkel to a 3-man booth? Does he get demoted? That is the wild card in all this. Your Gus Johnson thing makes sense, except we don't know what his contract status is. So that's an interesting wild card. But to your point, do they go out on the outside to find somebody, or do they promote from within? And the reason I bring up the Spanarkel factor is, to me, the logical thing would be to just promote Kevin Harlan to the #2 slot. Mm-hmm. But then the question becomes, are you promoting him, Stan Van Gundy, and Dan Bonner into that spot and demoting Spanarkel? Or do you consider putting Spanarkel with Kevin Harlan? Or do you promote a guy like Spiro Ditas into the equation? That could be a guy you could promote very easily. They also like Carter. They like Andrew Catalan.
Him and Lopez should be on the second weekend. I definitely think they should move up a slot to get to the second weekend.
Right. But that's the decision. And then again, and not to harp on it, the Jay Wright factor. Do they decide to give him an NCAA tournament here, Adam, or not? Or do they keep him in the studio for another year? So I think there's a lot of questions here. And again, let's say they don't decide to keep Grant Hill. I think they're going to keep Hill and Raftery at least for the first year with Ian Eagle. Eagles worked with both in the past, so I don't see that being an issue. But this is an opportunity for them to tweak this roster, Adam. It's going to be interesting what they decide to do next year.
I mean, you guys have heard the phrase "God save the Queen," right? And God save Jim Spanarkel, because he has to be a part of this coverage. He is the NCAA tournament. Like, Spanarkel and tournament, that just goes together. I don't know why. He's got to be involved somehow. But again, I think this is an opportunity for CBS. Who's out there in kind of the younger ranks? I think Eric's talking about this. What he's describing is everyone kind of taking a step forward on a team, right? Which would open a spot for maybe a younger play-by-play guy. Maybe Ian's son Noah, who's calling games, I think, for the Clippers, right? And maybe that's you bring him in as the 7th, 8th team, something on those lines, get some reps in there. But I'm curious. Two things. I think Jay Wright was great in the studio until you brought in the NBA guys. I think once you brought in Kenny and Charles, I feel like Jay Wright was a little bit kind of out on an island. Like, he's not as quirky as Charles. He's not as I guess conversational as Kenny Smith is. So he kind of felt out of place with those guys. I agree with you, Elo. Without the NBA guys, I thought he was great. You had Barkley in there. I think that's a whole kind of a circus that I don't know that Jay Wright really fit into. I'm more curious, look, the way college hoops and athletics and football are going, you're going to see more coaches leave early, right? They have no interest in the NIL stuff. They have no interest in that stuff. Who else pops available? What other coaches are out there? Coach K does a radio show. I know he has probably no interest in doing TV, but that's a huge name that's floating out there, right? Roy Williams, although he's kind of got an aw shucks, mentality about him. Does he play well? I'm curious how many other former coaches are going to hop into that and go, hey, you know what? I'm done with coaching. Let me do some TV work. What other names are going to end up popping out there that are options for CBS? I don't think anyone would have predicted Jay Wright at this time last year, which tells me there's going to be a name that pops free that we go, hey, that's interesting. Maybe that person's a fit for a TV job.
Yeah. And of course, obviously ESPN's in the mix for some of these guys coming out of coaching with all the college basketball they covered during the season. So, it could be one of those things where somebody goes to work for ESPN, which covers more college basketball than anybody else, or with FS1 and Fox, somebody might start to shine there and get consideration for the NCAA tournament too. Definitely something to keep an eye on, but
keep in mind, by the way, TBS will have the Final Four next year.
Yes.
And it's a Turner CBS deal. So you got Turner guys too. I mean, Adam mentioned the NBA guys. They're not going away. Yeah. They're not going away.
Yeah.
And so what about a Brian Anderson? Could he be in the mix to promote him with Sparnarkel, for example? I think there's a lot of combinations there that's going to be interesting. This will be one of the more anticipated NCAA tournament broadcast pairing assignments in a while, because really the last few years it's pretty much been status quo for the most part.
Yeah. I think with the NBA guys, Elo, I think in the studio they've got to find the right mix, because let's all be honest. We all know here that Charles and Kenny are not watching a single iota of college hoops up until the 2 weeks leading to the tournament. I highly doubt that either of those two are spending time going over film, knowing rosters, doing that stuff. And that's not a knock on them. I just simply don't think they have the time to do that. So if you're going to put the NBA guys in studio, you need the right mix of personality that can still offer some actual college basketball credibility, but also continue to mix it up with those two guys. I think that's where Jay Wright got a little bit miscast, and maybe he'll get better and grow into that. But you got to find someone that can kind of fit that mix. I don't love Reggie Miller on the college stuff. I just don't. I thought Stan Van Gundy was actually really good. I really like Stan as an announcer in general. I thought that video. Did either of you see the video of Kevin Harlan calling that last second shot?
I was behind them, so I had a up close view.
Give me a ding on that, Jeff. Just the way that he we got him out of the way that Stan kind of laid out, the look on his face, like he eats, sleeps, and breathes basketball. You can tell that's his thing. And I really like that some of the NBA guys, Reggie, I could do without. I'm glad Chris Webber is behind us at this point. But I think you got to figure out that studio mix if you're going to add or keep in Kenny and Charles, which why would you not, by the way? They're big names and they're going to draw eyeballs to the studio shows.
Well, and here's my question. Why do we have to mix in the college hoops NBA guys? What makes Inside the NBA such a huge show, and I know we'll get into them later with the awards, is the chemistry, right, that Charles and Kenny and Ernie have, whether they talk about the NBA or they're talking about other stuff. So my idea would be keep them together. They could do the college hoops, put them on the Turner slot, and then have the college hoops guys on the other channel. Why do we have to to me, it'll never work mixing up college and NBA guys. Because in Jay Wright's defense, I don't think he's ever worked with Charles Barkley or Kenny.
Exactly, yeah.
So how is that gonna work? So why not just keep the Inside the NBA guys together? Yes, they're not college guys, but I think people would still be interested in watching them because they're entertaining. And yeah, they don't, and then let the college hoops guys have, keep that group. I just think they overcomplicate it. To be honest.
I think Charles and Kenny and Ernie would be, and Shaq. I know Shaq's never involved in the college stuff, but I think those three, they would kill a Manning cast style broadcast for college hoops.
Yeah,
if they did a Manning cast situation, second screen, where you got to hear Charles and Kenny and Ernie, and again, if Shaq wants to be in or somebody else, I think that would do some really big numbers. Because I agree with Eric. And I think that's why CBS does it, though, right? Is because they need a college credible voice on that panel, right? Because if not, it's just NBA guys. I'm okay with that. You're okay with that, Elo, but I don't know if the casual viewer is going to be okay with that. But if you put those two plus Ernie and plus Shaq or somebody else on a Manning cast style broadcast, second screen for the Final Four, I think that would do some really good numbers.
Why haven't you called Turner and CBS with this idea?
They won't return my calls. I've been trying to call them forever, Eric. I'm pitching show ideas. I got nothing. I'm not.
Well, remember, Adam's trying to get Lane Kiffin on the football show.
That's true. Yes,
still working on that.
Yeah, and of course now you bring it up too. they did the studio a little bit differently this year, because usually in New York they have Ernie and Greg Gumbel split the day between those guys, and and then with Ernie getting in with Kenny and Charles, that they get to play a little bit of some of that magic. But this year they had Ernie in Atlanta to start out with, and Greg full-time in New York. So that was a little bit of a different twist this year.
You know what, Jeff? Every year I'm surprised, and I understand money talks, right? I'm surprised the NBA is okay with them taking away basically the A team for like 3 weeks and putting all that attention on college basketball. I know they pay a good amount of money, but I'm surprised the NBA is like, hey, hold on a second. Like, let's not devalue our product for 3-4 weeks while the college tournament's going on. And maybe Adam Silver or somebody in the league office has said something before, but I'm surprised that the NBA has never been like, why do we get, Russ Greenberg and Greg Anthony and Isaiah Thomas in studio? Like, where can we get some actual attention here? I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet.
Well, you know why? Because I think Turner, they would come back and say, well, when you guys guarantee that your star players are going to have load management, we'll put our guys back in the studio. Why can't our broadcasters have load management ourselves? And the other thing Turner's done, they have the Tuesday night crew. So what happens is during the tournament, they don't have games on Thursday. It's usually sometimes on that Tuesday, sneak them in. So that's kind of how they've, I think, circumvented that a little bit. To your point, it's valid, but I think that's part of the reasoning for that.
Yeah, so it definitely was a different twist. And then, so Greg Gumbel has re-upped with CBS, but is he only going to do March Madness? Because it sounds like he's off the NFL now.
And he's off the NFL. And I'll be honest, I don't know how much longer he should be hosting, because he still makes mistakes. He almost ruined the selection show. He made a mistake where he called out a school before the graphic came up.
Yeah,
and it's awkward. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I think
and I think the graphic was wrong too, which didn't do him any favors.
Right, that was the thing. It was one of the two things. Something happened that was like very awkward for a moment. And there was even one during the tournament where he mentioned there was a highlight, and I think he said the wrong school. I think he said Providence when it wasn't Providence. Kind of similar mistakes he was doing in the NFL. I mean, to be honest, Ernie was is the better host. I think moving forward, you're going to see more Ernie and less Gus. I mean, it's a valid question. I don't know how much longer Greg wants to do it. I mean, he's a good host, studio, but it's definitely his best days are behind him.
Yeah. I want to go back to the Kevin Harlan thing for a second, since Adam brought it up. So, Elo, you're right behind seeing this happen. And as a play-by-play guy, okay, we have to emphasize the moments and not kill the moments. I thought it was very interesting how he did the signal to the guys to lay out. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, because that's the unwritten rule is when a big play like that happens, is lay out. The best ones do it. They're the best at doing it. And I think Harlan's like, hey, remember, lay out. Because sometimes the urge as an analyst is you jump right in. There's a certain cowboy quarterback that likes to do that a lot. Well, in the NFL.
Only one?
Hey, Jim! Yeah, Jim! What was funny is Kevin Harlan was interviewed about that. He hated the fact that people showed that footage, that clip. Because he says it's like showing how the sausage is made. It was interesting that he didn't like that. But it was just impressive how, as play-by-play, he was in command of the situation, in control. The analyst, it was beautiful visual. Yes, that is the rule, is a big play happens, you can call your shot and then lay out, especially in that, because I was in that building covering the tournament. The Amway Center was not as loud. It was loud as heck. I couldn't believe how many Furman fans were there, how many people were rooting for the upset. When that chaos happened on the turnover, that building went unglued. And I think Harlan knew that and can use that crowd noise. That's where it helps on television. You can lay out because the crowd noise will tell you the story. It was really well done.
I thought two things about that video that were fantastic, because we don't always see that side of the broadcaster, right? I think one, the trust that both the analysts had in Kevin to basically, be quiet, right? Because to Eric's point, an analyst has an ego, right? They're going to want to say something. They're going to want to get in there. And the fact that both the analysts trusted him enough to say, okay, he's got his arm out, like, I'm going to do this thing. I actually thought the best thing was the look on Stan Van Gundy's face, because he legitimately looked like, oh my goodness, what did I just see? Like, he literally couldn't have formed words if he was supposed to at that moment in time. We don't often see that side of the broadcast, but it kind of humanized, like, broadcasters are just like the fans at home. Like, their mouth is on the ground, just like it may have been at your living room, at the bar you were at. And I thought Stan Van Gundy's face was an utter look of shock and disbelief of what he saw. And I don't know if he could have spoken if Kevin Harlan went to him and said, Stan, your thoughts. I don't know if Stan would have had words at that point, but I just thought it was really cool to see. That's the exact same face a lot of people at home are making. And to Eric's point, broadcasters, they're typically fans as well. They know the sport as well. They know when they see something big, and you could kind of see on Stan's face, like, oh my goodness, I just saw something crazy that I've never thought I'd see before. And that wasn't contrived. It wasn't acting. It wasn't, noises and gesticulations. It was a legit response. I thought that was really cool to see.
Yeah. And a play that obviously is what makes the NCAA such a magical thing in March. It's, so that's definitely some great stuff. So let's switch over to golf, shall we?
Hello, Jeff.
Hello, friends.
Man, the budget's gone up on this podcast.
Gee,
Yeah,
look at the financials around here.
Yes, we will.
The
We will speak.
azaleas are blooming today, Jeff.
We will speak in hushed
The
tones.
fake
throughout
birds are
this.
chirping.
Good stuff. So we just have the concluded Masters. So Jim Nantz goes from the Final Four to the Masters as he does every year, and interestingly enough, it was an interesting tournament because we had the LIV guys taking part in it, and that provided a different kind of storyline, which they didn't they didn't really bring a lot of that to the light, except for maybe a little slide crack that we'll talk about that Jim made that was kind of funny, but that's got to be an interesting aspect. Eric, you go from one sport to the other, so going from something like basketball to something like golf, that's a very interesting broadcast transition for a guy to make.
And he does it as well as anybody. I mean, that's his sport. He's the greatest golf voice ever. Makes it easy. It's perfect. I mean, I can't imagine. How can you imagine a Masters without Jim Nantz's voice on it, right? Like, he's synonymous with it. And he knows every golfer. He knows their backstory. He's on top of every moment. He knows that course. And yeah, to me, CBS does an incredible job with the Masters. I watched it. I don't watch as much golf since Tiger declined. I was one of those that watched a lot when Tiger was dominating. But the Masters, like, nobody does a better job with the camera angles, the conversation. Now, I think they're a little weak in the analyst role with Nick Faldo retiring. I was not a big fan of Immelman, but overall, I mean, it is great theater what they produced there with the limited. And the Masters has complete control. They have only 1-year contracts. They sign only 1-year contracts with their broadcast partners because they want to have that leverage. So you mentioned why there was no mention of LIV or anything. I guarantee you the Masters said, we don't want any of that mentioned. Yeah. Not to mention the PGA Tour has a relationship with CBS. I'm sure they're like, yeah, we don't want to mention anything LIV. So I think that was part of it. And I expect for the U.S. Open, it'll be the same thing. You're not going to hear much, if at all, anything about LIV outside of a little, CW joke, which, hey, who doesn't like a CW joke here?
That's pretty funny.
As much as the next guy. All right, I've got a couple of bones to pick with the coverage. I've got one specific. So to be perfectly honest, this was my show topic idea. For some reason, later in my life, I have just leaned into golf. I don't know why. So I'm glued to the Masters starting Thursday at 8 a.m. I'm on ESPN Plus. And for those who maybe weren't paying attention, the weather was not great for this particular tournament, right? A lot of rain on Friday, rain on Saturday. I understand right off the bat that's going to throw your broadcast schedule into some bit of upheaval. But here's the bone I'd have to pick. So for those who don't watch a lot of golf, a lot of times what you'll get is you'll get coverage of a featured group. Right. So they'll follow a group around a course for the entirety of the course. And you see that specifically on either ESPN Plus, which broadcasts sort of the non-CBS side, and the Masters app, which, by the way, best app going out there. If you haven't downloaded the Masters app, it's literally the best viewing app anyone has out there, hands down, bar none. And they only have it once a year and they still nail it every year. I don't know how they do it. But so here's the setup. On Friday, there was some rainouts, right? Trees actually fell in Augusta, which is abnormal. It was really surreal to see trees laying on the 18th green, right? That was surreal. They come back Saturday morning and they finish up the round, right, from Friday. So they finish up round 2. The cut line is undecided. And they basically go right into round 3, right there mid-Saturday. beginning mid-Saturday, we clearly knew the two leaders were Brooks Koepka and Jon Rahm. Those were the two. They had distanced themselves by about 4 to 5 shots from everybody else. So I go to my ESPN Plus app and I'm going to watch the early portion, right? CBS's window starts at 3 Eastern. So it's like 10 a.m. or whatever. I'm going to watch that particular round, right? I go to my featured groups. I got Jordan Spieth leading one, and I got Tiger Woods, who barely made the cut, by the way, who's, in a downpour of rain limping around the course. He's my other feature group. I cannot watch Jon Rahm and Brooks Koepka play. I literally can't see the leaders of the tournament playing any golf at that moment in time, right? So whatever, I'm gonna watch it because I'm a golf fan. So I'm watching Tiger because, like Eric, big Tiger fan. I want to see how he's doing, right? And then obviously that window stops and CBS window opens at 3. Jim Nantz comes on. Hello, friends. Welcome to the Masters, right? And not even an hour in, rain delay, they cancel it for the day. At that point, Jim says, "You're in luck, viewers, because we were taping all morning. So we're now going to show you the coverage from the beginning of round 3." So you had to wait until about 3:45, 4 o'clock Eastern to see Koepka and Rahm play, even though they teed off around like 11:30 a.m. Eastern. And everybody in America has smartphones. And I know you can't bring a phone on the grounds of Augusta, but there's a media center. There are people who are still watching who are able to tweet and text and do that kind of stuff. I have ESPN.com. I can see the leaderboard app. I know who's wearing on what hole. But you had to wait almost 4.5 hours to actually watch the leaders of the tournament play golf. I know why they did it. They want to protect that broadcast window.
So CBS must have got the rights to that then,
Correct.
didn't they? Oh, wow.
Correct.
It's just like, this is what tennis fans drive nuts.
Or they knew the rain was going to be bad and like, we're going to have to fill some hours here. So what's our play here? Let's show that part in our biggest viewing window. Again, I know why they do it, Elo, but as a viewer of sports, nothing drives me crazier. And Major League Baseball does this a lot as well. Jeff, you know this, but not letting me watch what I want to watch. I'm here to watch your event, and you're taking away the ability for me to watch parts of it, i.e. like a blackout in baseball. So that was my only quirk. And I know, Eric, to your point, CBS probably plays a role in that. I'm sure the Masters has a hand in that, but trust your viewers enough to go, you can watch the ESPN Plus version at 11. And if you're tuning in at 3, you're still going to see it as well. So I basically couldn't watch Koepka and Rahm until 4 hours after the fact, at which point I already knew where they were. And that was the whole storyline from there. So that's my major gripe. I have a minor gripe as well if we have time for this. So Eric actually hit on this with broadcasters. When you get to the beginning of the Masters, Jim comes on. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Masters. And he always runs through the cast of characters. We have Vern Lundquist on the 16th. We have, Peter Costas on the 7th. We have Andrew Catalan on the 12th, right? He runs through those people. Ian Baker Finch was out there. But then as the tournament goes on, he throws it to somebody, but he doesn't tell you who he threw it to. And outside, I don't know about you guys, outside of Vern Lundquist and maybe Andrew Catalan, I don't know the difference between Ian Baker Finch and Peter Costas and Trevor Immelman. So I don't know who's talking to me. And as a viewer, I want to know, like, who am I getting the information for on the 15th hole that the lie is a little bit rough and it's in the second cut and we're going to have to go. Who's telling me this? Is it, Trevor Immelman, who's won majors, who's a good golfer? Is it Ian Baker Finch, or is it a random reporter? At least tell me the name on the bottom.
Yeah.
Or throw it to, hey, we're going to throw it down to Peter Costas on 16 here. Like, tell me who it is that I'm hearing from, because I found myself a lot going, who's talking right now? Who is this? And by the time I figured it out, it was too late that, the shot was hit. But that's my minor gripe. My major gripe is show me what I want to see. My minor gripe is tell me who's talking to me.
Wow, that's a lot. Let me address the first part there you just said.
A lot to unpack.
With all the graphics, you would think it'd be easy for them to just mention Vern Lundquist 16 on the graphic and solve that problem. Because that's what a lot of the full disclosure, I'm like the ESPN broadcast, if I don't say who my analyst is, it'll pop up frequently on the graphics, commentators on the left corner of the ESPN broadcast. They should do that on the Masters. That would help Jim out on that. So I agree with that.
Yeah.
The Rahm thing that you're talking about, you hit home with me because I'm a diehard tennis fan, and for years and years, tennis did the exact same thing you just described, where they would not show you a tennis match. NBC was the biggest manipulator in this. They would not show you if it was Serena Williams. Right? We're not going to show you this match because it's going to air on tape delay on this channel, whatever. Tennis does that all the freaking time.
Olympics too. Olympics. Same
Olympics. Oh, yeah, that's another one. So it sounds to me, I had no idea about this until you just described it. It sounds like CBS took a page out of the Olympic and NBC tennis coverage playbook of we will let you have this coverage because the schedule changed. So my guess is there was an agreement reached. Well, we'll let ESPN carry Saturday, but they can't show Koepka and Rahm in return. We want that exclusivity. That's what happened there, Adam. I guarantee you that was the negotiation, and that what happened, because it's happened with the Olympics, as Jeff mentioned, and it happens all the time in tennis coverage, which drives me nuts.
Yeah, and I mean, everyone knew the weather was going to be bad. Everyone was saying, "Hey, we're going to have a tough weather day." So I'm sure CBS knew going into that broadcast day, we got a small window of time and we're going to get delayed at some point. What are we going to show for 4.5 hours now without any live golf? Are we going to replay the 2021 Masters or the 20 Masters? Sure, you could, but those aren't going to rate as well, right? So I think it was a decision to say ESPN can have Spieth and Woods in the featured group, and they're going to draw numbers, right? I mean, those are two big names in golf. You're still going to get people watching that. Plus, to be fair, ESPN Plus also had, I think they do holes 4, 5, and 6, and then they had Amen Corner. So you can just watch those holes, or you can follow those particular groups. So you had good content there. I'll give them that. There was ability, but I think CBS was like, we got 4.5 hours of Phil here, friends. What are we gonna do? Let's save this, the Rahm and Koepka stuff. Let's play that in the afternoon. But here's the thing, fellas. This is not 1980s U.S. Hockey Olympics, right? Like, we have so many devices at our disposal now. Treat your viewers with a little bit of dignity. Let us watch what we want to watch, right? I'm paying for ESPN Plus. I'm paying whatever if it's 6 or 7 or 9, whatever it is now. Like, give me the courtesy of letting me watch what I want to watch. If it was free, like the Masters app is, I could then argue to you, okay, you know what? Like, you're getting a free app, take it and like it. I'm paying for ESPN Plus. I'm paying for the right to watch these things. Don't then take away, as a paying customer, the ability to watch the event that I was told I could watch. I think that's, I would have loved some explanation on that, or again, treat viewers with a little bit of respect and let us watch what we want to watch.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. What if CBS would have come back and said you can watch Rahm and the leaderboard, but you got to go to Paramount Plus to watch it live? Because that's probably where we might be headed with this if this happens in the future.
Interesting.
As a golf nerd, I would probably switch over to Paramount Plus and I'd watch that round. Yeah, I agree that not everybody would. Like, I'm sure you might, Elo, for a great tennis match, go, you know what, I want to see this, I'm in on this. So if you had told me that was an option, I probably would have done that. But that's a fair call to say, how does CBS put it kind of behind their paywall or get something recouped back from their perspective? But I just thought that was a miss on the part. It wasn't even on the Masters app either. So neither the Masters app nor ESPN Plus had it, which makes me think, Eric, it was certainly a CBS Masters decision to say, hey, this is how we're going to handle the rain delay in this future group.
Yeah. How are we gonna manipulate the afternoon? Yeah, just be a little more transparent too. I mean, that's it does kind of insult the audience intelligence, in my opinion. And of course,
to your point about the live guys, the point about your live guys too, by the way, Jeff, quickly. So I read that Phil Mickelson declined to do a pre-tournament press conference. So they essentially on Tuesday, Wednesday, they bring all the guys up in certain days. Mickelson declined to do the pre-conference, the pre-tournament conference. I also read someplace, don't know if it's true, that he was asked after a round for an interview. He declined that as well. Now, Phil obviously is kind of in a weird space, right? He's kind of a quasi pariah on the PGA Tour. So I don't know if he was just trying to lay low. You certainly saw all you need to see of Brooks Koepka, which has got to drive LIV crazy because he's the one guy who's not decked out in LIV golf gear. He's not decked out in their team stuff. He was the only one that still had all his original sponsor stuff on. So that had to drive LIV crazy. You saw Patrick Reed out there a little bit on Sunday when he was making his charge. You got plenty of Phil on Sunday making his charge. I don't think they ignored the LIV guys. I just think the storylines just didn't include them until late. But I also think Phil bowed out and would have had opportunities to get in front of a microphone.
Oh, I would imagine that that the fine folks at the Masters probably had a conversation with Phil, saying, if you want to keep being invited back, don't raise any noise.
I think Phil wants to like again, I wasn't there. Nobody was, by the way. Spoiler alert, I don't go to the Champions Dinner. But from every account that was out there, it seemed like what the reports were is that Phil was quiet at the Champions Dinner, which, for those who don't know, every Tuesday they have a dinner before the tournament with all the past winners. The last year's winner sets the menu, and it's a big kind of gala event. Phil, as the previous winner, is always invited. From what the reports were, Phil sat on the corner and was very quiet all night. I think Phil is trying to specifically take a bit of a more quiet, demure role, particularly around these tournaments, just because I don't know if he knows what the tenor around his legacy is right now.
Well, let me counter with this. And by the way, Jeff, we make a note of this now. We now know that we could do golf break TV coverage here. Yeah. Do you believe some in the conspiracy that CBS purposely did not show Phil Mickelson as he was making his run on Sunday, moved up the leaderboard? It's Phil Mickelson, who you'd argue has been the second best TV draw ratings wise, behind only Tiger Woods. And yet they didn't really show every shot from Phil Mickelson. They kind of, hey, look, by the way, look at Phil. Oh, they didn't go every shot. Whereas I think if he wasn't on LIV, they might have shown every shot as he's making his push, because they would have done that if it was Tiger. Do you think that's a LIV conspiracy theory there? Or is this one of those things where they got caught sleeping in the wheel? Where you stand on that?
Now that you mentioned that, I think they probably showed more of Spieth, who was his partner that day.
Yep, 1,000%. Yeah, no, I think there's no conspiracy. I think that's a dead fact. Elo, is that they were purposely trying to offer the coverage in a way that slanted more towards the tour guys than the LIV guys, right? You had no choice with Koepka. He was in the lead group, but I think that was all of the LIV tolerance threshold, I think, was met at the Koepka level. And I think anything above that, they're like, and there's Patrick Reed. Oh, that winning anyway. Back to 17. Like, I think they just quickly wanted to get those guys mentioned. But to your point, Eric, you couldn't ignore Phil, right? Because he's such a big name. Like, you could have probably ignored the run Patrick Reed made. Yeah, he was in fourth place at one point in time in the leaderboard. I think it was -7 or -8, right? So he was 2 or 3 shots back. You could have ignored him the entire time, and nobody would have cared. But you couldn't ignore Mickelson -8 on a leaderboard without showing something. But I agree with you. If this had been a regular PGA Tour event with no LIV involvement, and LIV's not a thing, it's probably double shot, right? It's probably like Phil in a corner box with the Rahm teeing off, right? It's probably that level of coverage.
Yeah, especially when a guy's scorching at the leaderboard like he was in that particular instance. Yeah. Of course, you mentioned Uncle Vern, made his cameo at the Masters. And this is really like a perfect spot for Vern to do a cameo because of the way golf is. And of course, he is a master at capturing things in just a few words. So it's always kind of nice to see Vern Lundquist back, get a little memory lane trip.
My only problem with Vern is Happy Gilmore has ruined Vern as a golf announcer for me. Just because every time I hear it, I'm like, is there going to be any chance he drops out a Happy Gilmore reference? But always good to see Vern on the. Again, I like, Elo said, I think CBS does golf better than anybody else. I think they do it better than NBC. I think they do it better than ESPN, ABC. I think they do the best job with golf. I think their announcers have to get a little bit better. Like Phil would have been a perfect announcer, by the way, had he not kind of ruined his legacy at this point, right? I think they've got to figure out who the Nick Faldo replacement is. I thought Illiman was okay. Like he didn't wow me with his intellect or anything, but he wasn't dreadful by any stretch. But I do think that they've got to shore up that lead analyst role on the golf side for CBS.
And they've had a lot of turnover in their ranks too, because they parted ways with David Faraday and Gary McCord and try to get a more younger set of guys in there. And I get Frank Nobilo is another one of the guys that the calls, but again, Adam wouldn't know that because nobody said his name. So
that's fair. That's fair. I saw his name on the graphic at the beginning. That's it.
Yeah. So I think they're still trying to find their footing with their coverage, and even still, they're better than the others as they try to find their way through this. So I think that speaks a lot to their production values and things like that. They have Nantz holding it together.
I'm not done with golf though, gentlemen. For some odd reason, this is straight out of a page of me watching the Big Three. I happened to stumble upon a LIV Golf event on the CW a few weeks back.
Same.
Flipping channels.
Of course you guys did. Oh, man.
And there's LIV Golf on, so I had to watch it. So, Eric, have you seen a LIV broadcast at all yet?
No, I've not.
Okay. Jeff, you have seen it, right? So let me just describe for you, Eric, my biggest pet peeve. So imagine a full screen like you're on here, right? Most, CBS has a little like opaque box in the bottom right corner with the leaderboard. Some people have the crawl on the bottom. LIV has a vertical top to bottom, like 3/4 in the screen leaderboard that's black. Although it's a little opaque, it's basically black.
It's like
NASCAR. It takes up
the
middle part of the screen, and it's not even like your full name. For you, it would just say LOP. Right. So it doesn't even tell you like Lopez or Allen, like it's initials, and like you don't know who's hitting. And then like they pop up, like let's say you're number 21, they pop your name up to the top and show like Lopez hitting. But again, it's just LOP. You don't know who you are. And then behind that, they have the names of the teams. So each of these guys is attached to a team. So they're tracking the individual and then they're tracking the team. And next to the guy, they have the team logo. I don't know the names of any of these teams. So I'm just trying to figure out like, oh, Sergio's got the pink thing. All right, the pink thing's in second. I guess they're doing okay. I couldn't, the whole lead, they got to figure that part out. And then the camera coverage is terrible. I think they have, Jeff, tell me if you disagree, 2 cameras max per hole. Like you're getting basically the tee shot and then you're getting a wide green shot and that's it. And even if you're on the fairway, they're zooming in from the green shot to capture them on fairway. The entire thing was completely bizarre. If you want to grow traction for LIV, and let's face it, they have good golfers. I don't think there's ever been a sense that they don't have good golf. They have good golfers. You saw Brooks Koepka, you saw Patrick Reed, you saw Phil Mickelson. But the way they present their tournaments, I can't imagine a viewer at home is going to be like, yeah, I'm gonna be in on watching this. If you watch the Masters this Sunday, which again, gold standard, I get it, and then go watch the LIV event this week. By the way, anybody know where LIV is playing this next tournament?
I have no idea. I know they're going
Australia.
to DC.
Of course you don't know, right? Because
I know they're
no
going to DC somewhere.
They're playing in Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're mopping up the Masters run. Phil got all riled up for the Australian tour run that's coming up here. But if they don't figure out presentation, I don't know how you're going to watch that thing on TV. It's not a consumable product.
I think I have a very good description of their presentation. So as you mentioned, their leaderboard, it's like NASCAR. You know, I don't watch a lot of racing, but you know, they take.
But it's not on the side, Jeff. Like I'm okay if it's on the side. And then you get the rest of the picture. It's literally in the middle of the picture. It's 3/4 down the left side of the picture. Like you see golf, you see bar, you see more golf. Like they didn't even figure out a way to like hide it someplace.
Yeah. So basically, you get a 4:3 screen of the action. Is how that looks. So, and their graphics are very splashy, very artsy, whatever you want to say it. What it reminds me of was when ESPN2 launched, because they had all these funky graphics and things like that. And I kept expecting when they went to David Faraday that he would be wearing Keith Olbermann's old leather jacket.
Can't prove he wasn't, by the way. You couldn't see him on camera. They don't have enough cameras to show Faraday, so you couldn't prove.
Did they at least introduce who was in each hole?
Well, that's the thing. So again, as a golf person, right? Like they do shotgun starts. So for those who aren't familiar with a shotgun start, basically everybody lines up 1 through 18, and at 145, the whole tournament starts, right? In other golf tournaments, you start on 1 tee and they do groups that kind of follow afterwards. So it was really hard to follow that because everybody was going at the same time. You would think they could turn that into like a red zone style of a broadcast where they're picking that out. But it seemed like the day I watched, they were following certain individuals. Like I didn't see a single shot from Brooks Koepka in the entire time I watched for the like an hour I watched. I saw Abraham Answer like all day long.
You've had really bad luck with Bruce Koepka apparently here.
I could not. Well, he didn't play well, so maybe that's why. But they could have taken more advantage of that shotgun start. To me, they didn't. The goal of that is to have more action, a lot more going on, more opportunity to flip between holes, who's got a good shot, who had a good shot off the tee. I don't think they have the infrastructure to pull that off.
I don't think they have hole announcers. I think it's just the 3 guys in their mobile studio. Yeah. So it's a
sounds great if I'm the Pac-12, by the way. I'm just saying. This is what we're getting on CW.
Yeah.
Well, there's Ion TV. Don't forget Ion, Elo.
Yeah, that's a whole but yeah, if I was more than shocked when I came across the LIV tournament. It was like, this is interesting, kinda.
Well, congrats to both of you for finding it. Congrats to both of you to find it, because not many have. So congrats.
That's so fair. I got to assume, and listen, let's all be honest here. Like the players who went to LIV win for the money, right? We can all talk about they want to grow the game and they think golf is a team sport. We all know they win for the money, right? There was no chance that anyone showed them what the broadcast would look like, right? Like I can't imagine that anybody who signed up was like, this is how you're going to view me. Now, when you got $100 million in the bank, guaranteed, maybe you don't give a rip what you look like on TV, but man, like I can't imagine somebody is like, that's what the broadcast. Oh, okay. Like that had to have been a detail left out of the contract.
Yeah. And talking about the contrast, I kind of brought this up before you guys came on the show. So Koepka wins the LIV tournament here in Orlando. Orange County National looked awful. It was, I mean, that course looked burnt.
A little bit below Augusta, just one rung.
Yeah, yeah, just a little bit. Yes. And they've got the party music going on and stuff like that. I mean, I did hear from a friend of mine who knew some people who went. Their failure was that you had to wait 30 minutes to get a beer. So, so
it's not uncommon
in-person experience was not good in some respects too. But that was definitely a different kind of broadcast. And Eric, we're glad that we were able to.
It was not Bay Hill. Then is what you're telling me. The Orlando version of LIV.
No. It was just plain brutal. It I think might be an understatement.
I know you both aren't huge golf followers, but I got to believe right now, if you gave Brooks Koepka a do-over, he's gone from living on the PGA Tour. And I'm wondering how many other guys would follow suit. Like, I got to imagine right now, if Brooks could get out with no contractual, no money owed, I think he'd go to PGA in a heartbeat.
I've heard the other theory is that LIV is perfect for him because now he only wants to play the majors anyway. So this kind of works with the way he schedules.
It's possible. I mean, again, I'm more inside golf. Netflix had a special called Full Swing where they follow golfers around. And there was an episode with Brooks Koepka that was actually really, really good from a sports perspective. He just come off knee surgery and he's talking to his wife and his friends. And he's basically like, I don't think I can compete anymore. I'm not healthy enough. My mind's not right. I cannot compete anymore on the PGA Tour. I may be done at whatever young age I'm at. LIV comes over, offers him like whatever, 100 million guaranteed. And I think he saw it as a retirement thing. Like, okay, you know what? I might as well take some money and go play some golf, right? I think that he's healthy now, though, Jeff. I think he knows now I can compete with these dudes. Like, I should be on this tour week in and week out, competing for trophies, competing for championships. And I think that competitive juice, at least in him specifically, I think if he got a do-over, I don't think Phil would take a do-over. I don't think, Harold Varner would take a do-over, right? I don't think Ian Poulter would take a do-over. I think Brooks would take a do-over tomorrow.
Yeah, I think you're right on Brooks for sure because he has found his way back, and now he's kind of stuck. Unless he wants to pay all that money back, just because I guess that's the deal. If you decide to leave LIV, you got to pay the money back.
I don't think you want to cross that particular funding group, Jeff. If you can avoid it, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. So let's switch over to some baseball.
The sound effects are just tremendous.
All right, so we've had a little bit of movement to talk about as far as play-by-play announcers go, and as it turns out. Chip Caray left my Atlanta Braves to go be the voice of the St. Louis Cardinals. And I had Chip Caray on this very here podcast a few weeks ago. Getting a ding for myself. I've had him on 3 years in a row. So,
okay.
Goes back from, when I knew him in his Orlando Magic days, which is another testimony to my age. But so Chip goes to St. Louis. And one of the things he did, he said he really thought he would spend the rest of his career in Atlanta. But St. Louis opened up. He's from St. Louis. That's where he was born. And it was an opportunity to go home. And, he became interested and piqued by that. He also intimated there were some challenges with working for the Braves and Bally Sports. He would not elaborate, but, and I didn't push him because I want to get him on in the future. So, I did my Pat McAfee deal there. So, he
were you wearing a tank top at that time, Jeff?
Nobody wants to see that. So he basically intimates that, he would be happy staying, but he wasn't as happy as he had been. So St. Louis opens up and he makes that move there. Obviously his grandfather had worked there at one time. So there is that lineage and all that. But you think about his career, he's worked for the Cubs, the Cardinals, and you can say in the last 30 years, the Braves have been, one of the elite franchises. So that's pretty good luck, getting to work in those environments. He's replaced in Atlanta by Brandon Gaudin, who did a lot of work from Fox. I know he did a lot of college basketball. And I guess he is from that area, and the Braves job was his dream job. So isn't it funny how life works out sometimes? So I know you guys probably don't watch a lot of these guys. You know, I don't see Adam and Eric watching a lot of Braves and Cardinals games. I could be wrong, but
I'm watching the LIV tour, Jeff. I don't have time for that.
he's all in.
He's trying to find Bruce Koepka. Can't find him on ESPN Plus. Can't find him on CW. He can't find him anywhere except on a reality show.
Team Smash on the LIV tour. I'm with you.
But the Chip Carey thing, right? It's kind of full circle. The Carey family with the Cardinals. I mean, it seems to have been well received so far, from what I could tell. Yes, I haven't really seen a Braves game yet, so I'll defer to you, Mr. Braves guy. But what's I don't know what the transition's been like, but it seems like Chip thing has worked out well in the St. Louis area anyway.
Yeah, I think that is the case. And one of the things he said was that caught me interesting. I think this kind of alluded to some of his being a little disgruntled in Atlanta. Was he said, well, I've told anybody that's interviewed me regarding the Cardinals, the St. Louis Cardinal fans are going to get the real Chip Carey. You know, now I don't know what that means, but he says you're going to either love me or hate me. So I don't know if he's going to, reincarnate his granddaddy's act or not, but he promises a little bit different version of him. Now I've watched a couple of games, haven't really seen him stray away from what he normally does. Now he's working with new broadcast partners, so I'm sure there's probably some growing and getting used to each other and getting that cadence down. But I found that to be a very interesting comment on his part.
Yeah, look, I'd be disingenuous if I told you I've been watching a ton of Braves and Cardinals, but on face value, what I know about it sounds like a win-win, to your point, Jeff. Like, everyone kind of landed where they wanted to land in the spot they want to land in. I think the two bigger picture items for me are this. One, obviously, for those who aren't aware, the Bally Sports stuff is getting interesting, right? Their parent company is filing for bankruptcy. They're not paying certain teams right now, particularly in baseball. I think it's the Twins didn't get paid. I think they're the Guardians now. I don't think they got paid. So there's going to be some upheaval with the regional sports networks and how that works. And perhaps working for a Bally product in Atlanta makes Chip a little uncomfortable, as it probably would any of us. If you saw what was going on, that may be an issue. But I think my bigger question here is, and again, we all harken back to a different time in baseball, right? I think the era of your 50, 60 year synonymous with the team announcer thing, I think that era is done. Like, I think we're just past the part where you're going to have a Harry Carey with a team for X number of years, right? You're going to have, some of these guys that have been with teams for such a long time that their voice is synonymous. I just think we're done with that era with streaming, with shorter contracts, with networks being sold, with, different entities picking up different things, paywalls. I think we're done of the era where you're going to see something like that happen anymore. And this is kind of a good example of it, where, to your point, Jeff, you could have seen a situation where Chip Carey retires as the Braves announcer, right? Does until he's 75, 80 years old and leaves the booth and goes to have a good time. But I don't think we're set up that way anymore, particularly in baseball, with all the upheaval going on from a broadcast standpoint.
Yeah, there does seem to be a lot of movement amongst baseball teams and announcers, changing and switching teams, guys coming in that, Matt Vasgersian has kind of gone in and out with some teams, done it part-time, things like that. So I think Rich Waltz, who should still be the Marlins announcer, in my opinion.
Yeah.
He's done some part-time stuff with some other teams.
I think the larger picture, I think it's very clear this year with baseball in general, right? You can tell there's a shift to try to attract a new audience, right? Try to get new viewers in, younger viewers, right? You see with the Apple Plus stuff, they're bringing in, recently retired players like a Dontrelle Willis, right? You're seeing them bring in sort of the quote unquote younger guys. I think it harkens back to an era where, again, for us growing up, baseball was, 4 seconds of talking, 10 seconds of dead air, 8 seconds of talking, 10 seconds of dead air, right? And we were used to that, where I think now this generation wants to be entertained every second they're on a broadcast, right? They want to have the freeze running in the background. They have the pitch clock coming up, right? And I just think broadcasters that are from a different era aren't connecting, or executives don't think they can connect with audiences like that. And I think you're seeing that switch to younger broadcasters. And let me just say it, because we're all thinking it, cheaper broadcasters, right? Chip Carey is going to demand a salary different than, your first year guy at AAA, right? So if you're in a cost cutting business and you're not making as much as you used to, Chip Carey had one valuation and Joe Schmo at another. I think you roll the dice and go, hey, we'll go with the young guy and figure it out.
Yeah, it is interesting. So I've listened to Brandon Gaudin a few times. I like what I hear. It's taking getting used to because and like you said, the era of your long, for years, is Ernie, Skip, and Pete with the Braves forever. We had that for a long time. With Chip coming, and this is like the first time in almost 50 years a Carey hasn't been on a Braves broadcast. So it is definitely a changing the guard there. So MLB
to borrow Rick Pitino, Vin Scully's not walking through that door. Like
Yes,
that's just how
yes.
it's going, unfortunately.
Yeah, really, like what is Euchre the last guy with the Brewers that is that long tenured broadcaster that can go almost a half a century? That's really
the other problem is now is TV is dominant. It used to be the radio guy, he could last forever, it's no big deal. It's now more and more people are tuning into the television side of things, and there's constant movement in television, like Adams addressed. There's guys that move on nationally. There's guys that move on to different markets. It's no different than players and coaches moving on to different franchises, right? It's just the same thing. We're seeing that on the national level.
Yeah.
And more now on the broadcasting side. I mean, we saw what the last offseason was, if you call it an offseason, with Buck and Aikman going to Monday Night Football and the transactions there. So I think that's just part of the trend, and true with the uncertainty of where these local teams are going to have their games after this season. I think this year they're fine, but after this year, who knows where these games are going to be airing.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, if you're a baseball fan, the MLB TV app is tremendous. I mean, it's under $50, you get a whole season. So the value is definitely there. They actually have audio overlay. You can overlay the audio of
I have
the home
it.
team broadcast.
Yeah.
I use that a lot.
I have it. It's very good. The only negative there, Adam, though, is they don't show Bruce Koepka there either.
He could probably hit a long ball. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, he'd probably hit 300.
Marlins can use him. I would wish as a Marlins fan.
High exit velocity.
Not a hockey fan though. Not a hockey fan from what I saw recently, but he might be a baseball fan. I don't know.
So yeah, I use that overlay quite a bit, and because I like radio broadcasts of baseball, always have. I love the Braves radio broadcast crew. It's like it just feels so comfortable to listen to. So I would recommend people do that from time to time because it does give you a different perspective as far as that goes. So a little bit of movement there. So now we're talking about streaming and things like that. So that brings us to our next topic. So NFL Sunday tickets. YouTube TV, the pricing is a bit of an eye-opener compared to what it was on DirecTV. So there are some early bird things happening. If you are a YouTube subscriber, you can get it for what amounts to half of what they will charge if you buy later and are not. It's almost $500 at that level, and it's right $250 right now. So they're doing $100 off. If you're a YouTube subscriber, if you miss that window, it's like $350, which is just a little bit more than what DirecTV was charging for their package. So this will be an interesting aspect. I mean, I'm looking at this now because, one, I haven't paid for Sunday Ticket in several years because I always game the system. So there's been that aspect, the old call and cancel routine. So
is the statute of limitations run out on that, Jeff? I mean,
yeah. See, I'm not a YouTube subscriber, and I think if I say I'm going to cancel, they're going to say,
yourself safe. Just say allegedly next time. You're covered.
Yes. So this will be interesting to see how this plays out, because as a Cowboys fan, okay, I'm going to get them on over-the-air TV probably 11, 12 times out of the 17 game schedule. Do I want to pay the freight for 5 games? That's, I would I miss the Red Zone channel? Yes. But those other 5 games I can flip on Sirius XM and listen to the radio call if I need to get my fix. So, because I have no appetite for going out to a bar to watch game anymore. And I'm not even sure how that's going to work now with the streaming and how they're going to distribute that for.
Well, they're going to do a similar deal that what Amazon did, where they'll reach a deal with the bars, where they'll give them the basically the access where they can have the broadcast and not be like, oh, we got to dial up our computer. They'll have it over a channel or something, and the bars will be able to use it. That's what Amazon did last year. So I would expect the same thing to happen. But Jeff, you didn't think the NFL actually was going to strike a deal with YouTube to give you a discount, did you?
No, I didn't think that. But I was just
Sounds
hoping
like you do.
No. I was just hoping it wasn't going to be as costly as it's going to be.
Here's what I don't know, and I haven't done a ton of research on this because I to full transparency, I have no interest in buying the package. Again, we've talked about this. I'm a Cowboys fan. The curse of being a Cowboys fan is I get to watch us lose every week on regular television, so I don't have to worry about getting all that stuff. And the games I can't see, I have the Sunday or the Red Zone package through NFL Network, right? So through a basic cable package, I watch that. I actually enjoy the Scott Hansen version, and if the Cowboys are actually ever threatening to score, I can actually see that on the Red Zone, so I'm okay with that. So the 5-6 games I can't watch, I can follow along enough on the Red Zone to be okay with it. Here's what I don't know. Maybe I didn't read enough, and you two can educate me. What am I getting something new for more money? Am I getting additional features? Am I getting something? Am I getting something different? Like I had hoped, like, imagine what they would do if you could just buy a team, right? I can just buy the Cowboys, right? I can pay for some sort of add-on to it. Am I getting something new with this? Because if I'm paying the exact same price to be probably a tad bit more inconvenience because I have to now figure out how to get streamed to my television. Not that it's hard to do, we can all figure it out, but it's a couple extra steps, right? There's buffering, there's lag time, there's a couple of inconveniences, although minor. I think I saw a chart that YouTube TV was like 50 something seconds behind the Super Bowl in real time. That was like the third best, I think, in terms of the streaming devices. But what am I getting different? Am I getting anything more for my money?
So basically they have offered, some 4-box options, I think is part of that. What is some of the other things they have? Let me run down the pricing because I think this is interesting.
So sounds like, okay.
Yeah. So you are either a YouTube subscriber?
Yes, I'm a YouTube subscriber, and I subscribe to Sons of UCF YouTube channel.
I have a popular YouTube channel, Jeff. Yeah, for sure.
Yes. And I started a YouTube channel too, so please like and subscribe as well.
Shameless plug. There we go.
So, YouTube subscribers, $249 per season if you purchase by June 6th, $349 after, $289 per season if you bundle with the Red Zone and buy by June 6th, $389 for the season if you bundle with Red Zone after June 6th. Non-subscribers, $349 per season if you get by June 6th, $449 per person after June 6th. If you bundle with Red Zone, it's $389 per season before June 6th and $489 after June 6th. That's a hefty amount that,
Sounds like subscriptions are going to go up if I'm hearing that.
That's a lot to pay to watch a Texans Jaguars game. As an option there, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Do you?
I'm with Adam, by the way. I'm a Red Zone guy. I have the Scott Hansen package as well. Part of me wonders if the Sunday ticket's a little outdated now because, to Adam's point, with Thursday night football, Monday night football, Thursday night, they just announced that now a team can play on Thursday night twice, which you know what that means. More Dallas Cowboys football on primetime, guys. Congrats. But I kind of know, like, and the Nash with the windows, the way they're set up, I mean, you're pretty much seeing the marquee teams pretty frequently without it now. I feel it's outdated. I could be wrong. I'll defer to you guys, but that's my only thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations, Elo. If you're a fan of a smaller market, not as not as good, I guess, frankly, team, Texans. I live here in Jacksonville, right? A Jaguar team, although they've got some young players, I could see them getting some prime time run in those Thursday games or something like that. But if you're a fan of a middling team that's in a small market, a Carolina Panthers, right? I could see it being something where you almost need it to watch. But I think the majority of the NFL teams, the Big 10 or the Big 12, whatever you want to call those teams, not the college conference, but the actual teams, I think you probably can get away without having Sunday ticket and catch enough on Scott Hansen Red Zone. And then through the Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and all the other random games going on, I think you can probably catch enough there.
Yeah. So some of the features, and they don't really go into like, so key plays and multi-view. Okay. So, all right. Multi-view is not really anything new. I mean, DirecTV had 4-box, sometimes up to 8-box, multi-viewing. So that's not really anything new. They're pushing, integrations for buying merchandise, social features, stuff like that. I would be more interested if there was a team only purchase option. That would be fantastic.
Right. The NBA has that with League Pass as an option, where you could get your own team, pay only for that.
Yeah.
A certain amount. I don't think baseball doesn't have that, if I understand, as I recall, on the TV.
No, and their package is so inexpensive. I mean,
yeah.
You get everything. So
I feel So I don't know. I feel, Adam, like we're being used in this segment just to see if we either talk Jeff into buying this or not buying. I feel like this is an intervention. This is like an intervention.
Look, I'm expecting he's going to have a promo code, like type in Jeff Allen at checkout, get 10. Like this is an affiliate deal at some point, and we're going to type in Jeff Allen at checkout and get like $10 off or something.
And if it gets me free Sunday ticket, sure, why not?
So the next time, Adam, that we're on with Jeff and he starts promoting the NFL ticket, now we know what happened.
Now we know. I got you. Yep.
There you go. But no, I am asking questions because I don't subscribe to YouTube TV. I might do a trial and see. I'm a little, streaming is kind of a love-hate thing. I love some of the aspects of it, but the fact that you have to buy so many different things to get everything that you kind of want is a bit irritating. But I will say this, and this will be a nice little plug for ELO. I love ESPN Plus. That is the bomb.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Good. Just the multitude of things that you can watch are outstanding.
Oh, okay. Jeff Allen at checkout for ESPN Plus deals.
I am in the wrong line of business. Yeah, new career started.
Got options.
Yes. So I don't have any Emmy music, so we're going to go straight into the Sports Emmys without any musical introduction. So I thought we would run down some of these lists. We will cast our votes in this scenario. So let's get to that. So we'll start with the Outstanding Studio Show Weekly. Your nominees are College Game Day on ESPN, Fox NFL Sunday, Inside the NBA, Monday Night Countdown, and NFL Slime Time from Nickelodeon. So which one do you guys want to vote first?
For those that may not be aware, this is Sports Emmys. They announced some of their nominees and all that. This will be announced. The winners will be on May 31st. This category's been dominated mostly by Inside the NBA and Game Day. That's been the two shows that have dominated this category. So it depends on who you think has had the better year. I kind of feel Adam, I don't know if you have an outside pick there. I think it's going to be. I'd be surprised if it's not one of those two. I would actually lean towards Game Day this year. I thought they had a really strong year. But that's me. I don't know what you guys think.
I would go Inside the NBA. I think Game Day this year, I mean, Lee Corso kind of stepping in and out. They introduced Pat McAfee. I think they had a lot of moving parts. I think they figured it out for a while there towards the end, but I think it was a little bit up and down. I think you know what you're going to get at Inside NBA. You know what, you're going to get hijinks. You're going to get more fun. You're going to get a little bit of viral clips. I think Game Day this year, probably more of a transition year. Like, how are we using Pollock? All of a sudden McAfee's here. Corso's not here a bunch. Kirk and Desmond are Kirk and Desmond. So I go Inside the NBA this year. I think College Game Day certainly can get there next year, but I think this year with some of the change and some of the uncertainty, I think I tipped the nod to Inside the NBA.
Yeah, I thought McAfee brought some good juice to Game Day. That was a good shot in the arm that they needed. Yeah, it's hard to argue against Inside the NBA. They are a gold standard and have been for a very, very long time. God, I haven't watched Monday Night Countdown in forever because I'm not because basically studio shows I watch would be Game Day or Inside the NBA. So I will
say this on the Monday Night Countdown. If you're looking for an upset pick, I mean, they got a lot of praise for the coverage of the Hamlin situation in the Cincinnati Buffalo game and how they handle that situation. So if you're going for an upset, a long shot, that might be the pick because this is one of the first times they've been nominated. So that if you're looking for an upset, like big odds, that would be the one.
That's a good call. I mean, later we're going to get to this too, but one of the people nominated was Robert Griffin III, who is one of the stars of Monday Night Countdown. I think he's brought a lot to that. You still have the Booger McFarlane effect, but they have a lot of rotating. Alex Smith is there sometimes. Larry Fitzgerald is there sometimes. Randy Moss is there, then he's not. Steve Young is there. They got a bit of a I think they still need to figure out their formula. I think they could compete, quote unquote, in this category in the next couple of years. I think if Robert Griffin stays there, I think he's going to be a star on that particular show. But I think it's a tad bit premature for them on this one. What till they add JJ Watt, and then maybe they got something.
JJ Watt.
He's available. I mean, he's available.
That is true. All right. So, Outstanding Studio Show Daily, MLB Tonight, NFL Live, Pardon the Interruption, The Rich Eisen Show, and Sports Center. Eric, you take this one first.
PTI is still going strong. The
Yes.
numbers are through the roof, even through the years they've done. I'll say this: I think PTI is the favorite here, NFL Live could be the sleepy here. They've really had a monster success since they made all the roster changes on that show with Laura Rutledge running the show, Kimes, and the crew they've got there. It wouldn't shock me if they stole this category, but I'm going to go PTI. I still think they're as good as they've ever been. They're on top of their game.
I think PTI is the gold standard. I think the bigger shock is the Rich Eisen show getting a nomination. This is typically the Dan Patrick spot, right? That gets in there. So I don't watch the Rich Eisen program. I don't have anything against Rich Eisen. This isn't a boycott, but I'm surprised Rich Eisen gets the nod there. I mean, again, that's typically the holdover Dan Patrick spot on that one. So that was actually the shocker. But I think I agree with Elo. I think PTI gold standard in this category,
which is interesting because both Eisen and Patrick, were, on DirecTV and NBC Sports Network when it was in existence. And, now they're on Peacock, so, and I know there's a lot of issues with the Peacock app. So I find that one very interesting. I would probably go PTI here as well. I'm a big Tony Kornheiser fan, so I probably would lean for that. The Rich Eisen show, I haven't watched in a long time, but I always thought he was trying to be Dan Patrick 2.0, with his own little version of the Danettes. I always kind of thought that was more of a knockoff to Dan's show, and since they're based in LA, they get a little too Hollywood heavy for my liking. So I would say PTI would be my vote in that particular one. All right, so Outstanding Show Limited Run. We have Fox MLB The Postseason, Inside the NBA Playoffs, Postseason NFL Countdown, Road to the Final Four, and World Cup Today. Who's your vote, Adam?
I wanted to go off the board and go World Cup Today because it was a big event, but I just think Fox was okay. I think they could have done a little bit better on the World Cup coverage. I think some new voices. Clint Dempsey was good. I think Landon Donovan's got to find his voice. Alexi Lalas, I'm being honest, kind of annoys me. I think Rob Stone is solid, though. I wanted to go World Cup Today because I really enjoyed that. But when I look at the other ones, I hate to go back to Inside the NBA, but it's basically the same show. It just has the word playoff slap behind it, right? So, but if I'm going to be a little bit different on this one, I actually really liked Fox's postseason baseball coverage. I think Big Papi, A-Rod, and Kevin Burkhardt, I kind of like that crew a little bit. I know Jeter's coming in, which is controversial, and the Big Hurt's going out there, but I might give the nod to Fox postseason. I love the bit where what Big Papi put vodka in Frank Thomas's water bottle and didn't tell Frank Thomas. I kind of like those hijinks there, so I'll go off the board. I'll go Fox postseason baseball, though it's probably not going to get close to winning.
I will go conspiracy theory and say Inside the NBA this year will get this award instead of the other award, just to kind of balance, do something a little different. A lot of people kind of bash the World Cup coverage from Fox. I would be stunned if they win it because I think a lot of people would absolutely be pretty upset with that. The MLB was pretty good, but I'm going to go with the Inside the NBA on this one.
I'll give you a good story about the World Cup coverage. So my wife is a big soccer fan, and she's watching the studio show, and Alexi Lalas makes some sort of comparison, and they start talking about Tom Brady for 5 minutes. And she's like, I don't want to bleep in here about Tom Brady during the World Cup. So I know she's not voting for World Cup Today. This is a tough one. you might be right on the balancing out of giving inside the NBA the deal on this one. I'm not an A-Rod fan, so I never watch the Fox shows that he's on. You know, yeah, I probably would go inside the NBA playoffs. I mean, I watch a lot of March Madness, so I do like Road to the Final Four, but it's not a stellar program. So that's just kind of one way to put it there. So let's move to Outstanding Personality Studio Host. We have James Brown, CBS, Reese Davis of ESPN, Rich Eisenman of NFL Network, Mike Tirico of NBC, and Scott Van Pelt of ESPN. Eric.
I think to me, this has got to be between two guys, Van Pelt and Reese Davis. And it just depends on what your preference is. I think those are the two. I'm not a James Brown guy. The Rich Eisen thing, he's pretty good. It's kind of weird, though, because he did host the NFL pregame show, but he also did some play-by-play. To me, it's either Van Pelt or Reese Davis. I think you go with one of those two. And if I had to, I'm going to go Reese Davis for game day.
Adam?
I'm going to go Scott Van Pelt. I think what he's done in that late night Sports Center slot, I think he holds that slot down really well. His show's creative. It's innovative. Does great interviews. He's birthed some new characters in a Stanford Steve, right? Who you now see across ESPN platforms. He's got some pretty iconic bits. Bad Beats is one I think that all of us probably see every now and again and laugh on. I think he's just consistent. He's steady. I don't know if he's ever won one before. I don't know if either of you guys can correct me on that.
I don't think so. I don't think he has. So that does work to your favor on that.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lifetime achievement, longevity. He's been doing it for such a long time at a high level, and keeps just doing a great job. I think he deserves this one just based on longevity and sort of a lifetime achievement. I think he's got a really creative show, and that's a tough slot to hold down every night. Coming right off of an event, you're interviewing somebody live. You probably don't know who you're talking to, so you got to figure that out on the fly quickly. The player of the game is all front and center in front of you, and yet he seems to seamlessly make that happen every day. I mean, Reese does a lot of stuff with college basketball and football, so he's got a little bit more screen time, but I'm going to go Scott Van Pelt.
Interesting. So I'm presuming Mike Tirico's on this list for, hosting the golf majors on NBC, the Indy 500, because he's not doing the Sunday night thing anymore.
Agreed.
So, I mean, if he was still doing Sunday night, I would probably, put him in higher consideration for this. But kind
of wild that Ernie Johnson's not nominated.
Yeah, that's
wild.
Yeah, that is a kind of a little bit of an eye opener there. I would say to break the tie, I'd probably say Reese Davis if my vote were to count for anything.
I would have no issues if Van Pelt won, just for the record. I think you could fly. I'm fine with either one. I think Adam made a great case, so I have no qualms with either one.
Yes. All right, outstanding personality play-by-play, Kenny Albert, and of course he works for everybody. So he works for Fox and NBC and Turner. Mike Breen of ABC, Joe Buck, now of ESPN, Ian Eagle of CBS and Turner, Chris Fowler of ESPN, and Al Michaels of Prime Video. So Prime Video gets a nomination, and Mike Tirico of NBC. So a lengthy list here. So Adam, take a shot.
I love Al Michaels. I don't know how he made this list. This one just feels like they typed it in. They're like, oh crap, he moved, didn't he? Whatever, it's already here, let's just go with it, right? So I don't know how Al Michaels made this list. To your point, just based on breadth of work alone, Kenny Albert is everywhere, right? I mean, he does so many sports. He's doing multiple nights, multiple sports. That's got to be tough. With hockey being sort of maybe the main sport for him, it's probably not mainstream enough. I don't know how many people watch that. I'm gonna go Ian Eagle. I think he's just a solid broadcaster on college basketball. He does NBA stuff, right? He does, he's doing football stuff on the side. I think he's NBA. I think he just does a great job whatever broadcast he's in. We talked earlier, Eric mentioned, from his perspective, doing broadcast, how hard it is to go from one sport to another at a high level like that. I think Ian Eagle always does a great job. He's got the prime games in a lot of these situations. So I'm going to go Ian Eagle, but I'm also going to question how Al Michaels got nominated.
Eric,
gotta motivate him to come back for another year. That's what it is. So I think Eagle is one of the top two favorites in this. I think Joe Buck's the other co-favorite in this. Shout out, Chris Fowler's the first time he's been nominated for a Sports Emmy as play-by-play. He's been nominated before as host and all, but as play-by-play, and he does tennis and college football. So I'm actually rooting for Fowler to win this one. Kenny Albert, I mean, the thing is, Mike Emmerich won a bunch of Emmys as the hockey guy. So you could win as hockey, but I don't know if Kenny can pull that off. I think it's between Buck and Ian Eagle. I could see Eagle winning, but I think Buck's going to win. I think Buck wins because he made the biggest impact by moving from Fox to Monday Night Football, and everybody praised it, how fantastic it was on the Monday Night Football and how bigger it felt like. So I think Joe Buck wins the Emmy for his move to Monday Night Football.
Yeah, so on this list, and yeah, I do agree with you, Adam. I mean, Kenny Albert, the fact that he does everything and he does it very well. Yeah, my pick in this would be Ian Eagle. I think right now he's probably my favorite play-by-play guy of anybody out there. So I would say that would be my particular vote on there. And we'll have to do the deep dive investigation as the Al Michaels nomination. Outstanding personality and studio analyst. Charles Barkley, Jay Billis, Nate Burleson, Ryan Clark of ESPN, Shaquille O'Neal of Turner, Kenny Smith of Turner, and Tom Verducci of MLB Network. So a lot of NBA Turner influence in this list. So Eric, what's your thought?
This is the most wide open one. This is the most wide open, I think. Well, you could go a lot of different directions with this. There's so many NBA guys. Do they cancel each other out or not, right? Like Billis, obviously, with his college hoops. You've got a guy like Ryan Clark making a debut here, kind of out of nowhere. This is the most intriguing one. I'm a Kenny Smith guy. I would pick Kenny Smith. But I do wonder, Adam, if these basketball guys maybe cancel each other, the NBA guys, and open it up for somebody else in this category. Maybe Jay Billis wins it again. But this is the most riveting one. I think this is a fascinating one.
Well, Eric,
Yeah,
you know what?
I
I was going to say before we get to Adam on that, Charles Barkley is going to say your pick is terrible.
Wow. Impressions, music, promotion. We do it all here on the Jeff Allen Sports Talk Show. I agree with you, Eli. I think the basketball guys cancel each other out because while I think Barkley is probably on the top line of those three, you can't make that show without all three of them, right? Like I think it's, they're synonymous with each other. I think that Shaq is a good foil for Barkley. I think Kenny is a little bit more reasonable. I know that they've won individually in awards in the past. I don't know how you separate those three personally. So I kind of take those three out. They're all going to be in the category. I typically like Billis. I feel like Billis is getting to the point, though, where maybe it's just me. I'm starting to question how much he's researching, how much he's, paying attention to the game. I don't want him to cross into that Vital territory where he just picks the 4 blue bloods every year and says that's who's going to win and that's the best teams. I thought when he came in the game, he was a little bit sharper with some of that stuff. Maybe I'm just reading into that a little bit. I don't know. I'm going to go off the board. I actually really, really, really like Ryan Clark. I think he's a really good analyst. I think he gives you good information. I think he gives you perspective. I think he gives you analysis. I think he gives you a little bit of insight for some of the players. I'm going to go Ryan Clark. I think you mentioned, Elo, how NFL Live has improved. He's a big part of that cast. He's a big part of that with Orlovsky coming in, with Marcus Spears. I think they've got a really good rapport there. I think Ryan, he does some really cool stuff. I don't know if you all watch the Pivot podcast that he does with Channing Crowder and who's the other guy? Fred Taylor. They have some really revealing interviews with athletes that you don't hear elsewhere in a lot of places. So I'm going to go Ryan Clark. I think he's not going to win because, to your point, Eric, first time in, he's probably not going to win the thing, but I think he's doing a really nice job. I think he's improved a ton. I think he's really helped ESPN's football coverage.
I'm feeling sorry for Tom Verducci because you got to figure on this list, it's going to have to be, well, it's nice to be nominated because I don't think there's any chance he wins in this at all. Yeah, I like Billis a lot too. Although I think he's kind of also gone very commissionerish on what he thinks college basketball should be. I think sometimes that stance gets a little overdone. But I'm gonna pick Charles Barkley on this one just because I think he's gonna ride the cachet on that one. So let's go to outstanding personality sports event analyst. So that would be Chris Collinsworth, Gary Danielson, Peyton Manning, Bill Raftery, and John Smoltz. Adam, take this one first.
I think this is by far the weakest of the list. I feel like there's a ton of names that could be on here that are not on here. I mean, all due respect to Gary Danielson, I don't think I would have had him in this category. I mean, he's a solid announcer, but outstanding, one of the top five. I don't know. Is Peyton Manning an analyst? I mean, he's really entertaining. I love the Manning cast. I think that's a really cool show. But is he an analyst? Is he I mean, that's such a non-traditional analyst role. I wonder if he'll have a tough time winning that because it's not what you expect an analyst to be. Collinsworth, Raftery, Smoltz. I'm just going to default to Collinsworth on football. It's the most popular sport. He's on the Sunday night broadcast, usually the most viewed broadcast. I'll go Collinsworth. But I think this is a really interesting weak field. I think there could be some other names that I'd love to see pop in here.
That makes me wonder if maybe Manning is going to win this just to be different. Like, wow, Peyton Manning won the Sports Emmy. Look at that. He can do it all. Like, wait, what? He's an analyst? I wonder if there's a curveball coming here. Or do they go with Raftery as a long time great,
That's what I was thinking.
That might be what I think they're going to do. I think Raftery might win this. I don't know if he's won one before or not, but maybe this is the year he wins it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a very eclectic list, to say the least. So, yeah, I was thinking Raftery, he gets to, as part of the Jim Nantz tribute of leaving college basketball, I think he has a little bit, gets to ride that wave a little bit on that. Outstanding personality reporter, Molly McGrath of ESPN, Tom Rinaldi of Fox, Holly Rowe of ESPN, Lisa Salters of ESPN, and Melissa Stark of NBC in her first year back. So, Eric, what do you think?
I think Holly Rowe's going to win this because I think there's been a lot of Holly Rowe momentum recently, especially with her coverage of doing the women's sports and college football and the main crew. I feel like Holly Rowe's got some momentum. She just re-signed a deal. There's just been a lot of buzz around her, maybe. I'm going to go with her. I'm going to go with her as the winner on this one.
I agree with that. I have a couple of wild cards. I think if we're doing a storytelling, nobody does that better than Tom Rinaldi, right? If we're talking like feature reports, things like that, like nobody does that better than Tom Rinaldi. Get the Kleenex out because you're probably going to cry during one of his, right? He's not a great sideline guy, in my opinion. I hate when they throw him on the sideline because I expect him to go, no, what were you feeling on that last third? Like, I want a tear from Mike McCarthy, who makes me cry, by the way. I expect Mike McCarthy to cry as well when Tom Rinaldi's interviewing him. My only wild card is Lisa Salters, only because Eric said this earlier. She was paramount in the DeMar Hamlin coverage, right? She was the reporter on the sideline. She was the one kind of giving everyone updates and really took a lot of the screen time while a lot of the unknowns were going on. So I wonder if, not that she's great, by the way, don't get me wrong, but I wonder if that one singular performance will kind of propel her a little bit above Holly Rowe, who I do think is another viable candidate. So I would lean Holly Rowe, but I wonder if Lisa Salters will get a bit of an uptick since she kind of led that DeMar Hamlin coverage.
Yeah, that's a great point, because that's, a very defining moment in the sports world that happened over last year. And it often brings people into prominence when they cover something like that. So that might be the catalyst that gets the reward. I think Holly Rowe certainly very, very well deserving. I think this is definitely one of those, you're good with either one, right? So that's a pretty much a no-brainer as far as that goes. And Adam alluded to this earlier. So outstanding personality, emerging on-air talent. The list has Andrea Carter of ESPN and the SEC Network, RG3 of ESPN, Eli Manning of ESPN, Greg Olson of Fox, and JJ Redick of ESPN. How long has JJ Redick been emerging? He's been around a while, but
I think he's been nominated for this category like every year.
Okay.
Consistency.
All right, Eric, what do you think?
This is, Redick might be due to win one, but doesn't this feel like a Greg Olson win and just add more layers to the, hey, are you really going to move him for Tom Brady? Like, imagine that if he wins, like, there's probably some Fox executives, Adam, right now that are rooting against Greg Olson to win this award.
That's why I want him to win.
Yeah.
I think this one for me is the toughest, right? With all due respect to Andrea Carter and Eli Manning, I don't know that. I think this is probably a 3-person race, right? With RG3, Olson, and JJ Redick. I like Redick from a couple of perspectives. One, he bothers the hell out of Stephen A. Smith, and I love anybody who's going to bother Stephen A. Smith and get under his skin. So I like that Redick can do that. I think RG3 is the most surprising I don't know if he's certainly emerging, but I think he's on this list because everyone was like, "Oh wow, he's actually really good at this." Like I don't know what the bar for him was, but I think as we all consumed him throughout the year and we heard him on college, we heard him in the NFL. I think we're all like, "Man, he's actually pretty good." Like I think that's how he gets on the list. But I think Greg Olson did it on the biggest stage, right? He was on NFC Championship stage, he was on the Super Bowl stage. I think he's probably got the biggest name cachet. I think everyone loved his coverage, especially on the NFC Championship game and explaining some of the rules and some of the things going on. That when the one guy didn't go out of bounds and he explained that, hey, you got to go forward, not backwards, right? That's why the clock runs. I think he had some really cool moments there. So I'm gonna go Greg Olson. But I honestly think if you gave me RG3 or JJ Redick, I wouldn't complain. But to me, I think this is the toughest category. I think Olson did it on a bigger stage than the other two, so I think that's why he gets the nod.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, the thing with RG3, I will say I was pleasantly surprised uh, by how he has he has performed. When you think of him as a player and some of the things he did, he's a bit of a knucklehead when it came down to it. But he brings a different flavor. So it's just not the same old, of somebody coming in and being an analyst. And he's doing both, studio and game coverage. So I think that is a great testimony to him. I love the fact that he went he went to Spirit Splash when he was here for UCF. So and
he's very engaged in social media. He engages with fans and stuff. He's always posting stuff, responding to people. I think he's very fan friendly, right? But I think this is more of a surprise. Like, wow, he's really good. Not that he's not emerging, but I think it's more of a like, wow, he's actually talented, and not that shouldn't be a knock on him. But I think that's probably how he finds himself on the list.
Yeah, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. About how we're kind of going through a bit of a generational change in broadcasting. More guys like him that do this engaging kind of stuff is going to probably be more normal than we've seen in recent years. And of course, the Emmy for best softball announcer goes to Eric Lopez of UCF Athletics. So congratulations, Eric.
I didn't see that on the list. I didn't.
I don't know.
It was a one-man race.
I hope you ran that by Adam. I think he had some candidates ready to go on the softball side. That's a lot of fun there.
I was watching a lot of LIV Golf. I didn't get a lot of time to check out the softball.
So the play-by-play guy for LIV Golf doesn't make your list.
I don't even know who that is. So no, he does not.
Yes. John Doe. So there you go. So very interesting stuff. That's kind of cool to go through the list and see who's.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how many we get right and how many we don't, and maybe have to recap this after all the announcements at the end of May.
Yeah, we will do that next time around. So, gentlemen, we've come to the end of the road. Let's get those shameless plugs in. Elo, lead off.
Yeah, you can catch me as Jeff alluded to, calling softball. It'll be next softball broadcast on ESPN Plus will be April 21st, UCF against USF. Some people care about when those two schools get together. It's a big series, April 21st through the 23rd. My next broadcast actually will be Friday, baseball, UCF baseball. Adam, I don't know if you've heard if they're in the news or anything, but they're hosting Memphis 5:00 before the spring game football going on Friday. So busy day on campus. I'll be on the call for that one for baseball, and then the softball after that. And then just doing a lot of softball content because as we get closer to May, it's postseason. People want to know who do I have in the NCAA tournament. So I'll be working bracketology stuff for X-Rating Softball. I still write stuff on blackandgoldbanneret.com. We got a night podcast, which is now referred to Night Shift. So I'm all over the place. And Eric Lopez Elo is the easiest to find. Keep up with what I'm doing.
Adam.
I will say, by the way, Elo is indeed the nation's premier softball bracketologist. I think he's like near perfect the last 2 years, Eric. I mean, we've gotten
went perfect last year, including nailing UCF to host, which nobody else had in the country, obviously. Had all 16 sites, all 64. The year before, I've hit 63 out of 64.
Down here.
I don't think Joe Lenardi can say that.
Yeah, down here for Elo on that one. But no, I'm Fortunate to be part of the Sons of UCF conglomerate. We have podcasts, we have live video shows on Thursday. We have a YouTube channel where we have videos, interviews, special
Merchandise.
reports. We don't sell the merch yet, but I can get you a hat, Jeff, if you need one. We've got a new reporter on the scene, Leo, who's been doing some great work for us. Our website, we've been adding some more written contact at twonightsmedia.com. So search Sons of UCF wherever you do social media type stuff, and you'll be able to get a hold of us. The crew is myself, Mike, Trace, and now Leo. So give all those guys a follow as well. No better guys to work with than those four. So super happy to be part of the group.
Yep, outstanding job that you guys both do. So Eric, give me a quick synopsis of the softball season. You know, after UCF had great success, as you mentioned, hosting a regional last year, getting to the Midwest. What's your take on how the season's unfolded?
It's been up and down. A little young in the pitching staff. They've had some injuries. They haven't had one of their catchers for the whole year, so they've had some growing pains. Lost 5 games via the walk-off early in the month of February and March. To put that in perspective, from 2019 to 2022, they only lost 2 games via the walk-off. So a little rough patch, but they're starting to play well. They've won 6 in a row. They're currently in the RPI 33 range. I think if they kind of continue to take care of business, they'll be an NCAA tournament. They can still win the conference tournament, which will be held in Tampa in May. So they're still there's a lot to play for this team. And I think they're starting to figure out who they are, and they're kind of clicking here and peaking as we get closer to May, which is when you want to be peaking.
Yeah, it seems like the pitching is starting to elevate as well.
I think Willis, obviously there's a pitcher from transfer from Washington, Grace Jewell, Sarah Willis and Grace Jewell have kind of stepped up to be that 1-2 punch that we kind of didn't know if they had that. They went by committee early in the year, and it was kind of up and down. They've gotten more confident as the year goes on, and some of their bats are going, like Shannon Doherty, who is on fire, and she just won the Order of Pegasus, which is the highest honor for any UCF student, not just student athlete, student. So congrats to her on that. So I think they're peaking at the right time, and hopefully they can continue that. They're at Tulsa, which is, as we all know, that's a problem. Good news is it'll be the last time we have to go to Tulsa.
Yes, the house of horrors for UCF sports. That's no other way to say that. So guys, as always, man, appreciate it. And we will do it again down the road very soon.
Always a pleasure, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Okay. So, Elo, when I saw you last out on campus, so